Microphone. That's better with the microphone. I'd like to call the council meeting number 4 for December 13, 2022 to order. And we recognize that we meet on the traditional territory of LHTAKO DENE Nation. I'd like a motion to adopt the approve the agenda, but before we do that, I've got 3 late items. Item number I2, Policy and Bylaw Chair Summary, that is submitted as a late item. K9 is a late item, and that's a staff report on rural economic diversification and infrastructure grant. And there was a bylaw, or number N7 is under bylaws, bylaw number 1932, City of Quesnel zoning amendment, bylaw amendment, bylaw number 1932, Chew Road. We're going to repeal second reading and do second reading again as amended due to a typographical error. So if I could have a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved Councillor Rudenberg, second Councillor Runge. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, we have no, pardon me. We're going to now move to D1, adopt the regular council meeting minutes of November 2-9. Please, Councillor McKelvey, Councillor Vick. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item number D2 is we would like to adopt the amended regular council minutes of November 22, and that is covered with administration report number 1/23 BC Active Transportation Network grant application, and there was a typographical error. Do we have any staff members needed to report on that, or we can just move ahead with it? So we're looking for a motion there. Councillor Runge, Councillor Tony Goulet. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We have no presentations, no delegations, no items arising from previous special closed meetings, no unfinished business. Now we will move to committee reports, and this is for Councillor Vick, the November 30th, 2022 Financial Sustainability and Audit Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, as mentioned, we had a FSAC meeting on November the 30th, and here are some of the updates that I'll report back to you from that meeting. I'm assuming everyone's already read the report, so I'll just dig in on certain issues, and if there's questions, I'd be pleased to take them. The capital update from this year looks pretty good. There's no major issues. There are some small carryovers which will go to next year, but honestly, very, very small, and those items, budgets will carry over as well. We moved on to discuss the 5-year capital plan, the first pass, and by that will be refined again in our first FSAC meeting in January. But on the first pass, there's about $778,000 worth of unfunded projects. The biggest one that we're working through is the community's in need of a new fire engine. Our engine 31, which came into service in 1999, that engine is aged out, and we need to think about its replacement immediately. So there'll be options brought to council on how we may go about that, but we do not have enough reserves in that account to cover a whole new fire truck. So we're going to have to be creative on how we fund that. It could be debt financing, combination with reserve, but we'll bring that to council when we have a plan to present. Then we heard around the topic of community group requests. And obviously, inflation has affected some groups, but most of the lines were held firm on what they were asking for. We gave a small increase to the ambassadors. They needed a little extra of cash for traveling and for their bursaries. The North Caribou Highway Rescue Group, which does a great service for our community, they had an interesting ask. They needed some support in getting a new, like a utility truck, like a 2-ton truck or a 5-ton truck, I can't remember. But as it happens, our local fire department has a truck that is aged out and no longer usable by our team, but we may be able to donate that truck to North Caribou Rescue. So I heard back from the fire chief today, and it looks like that may work out. So that's it's good news. They'll save those folks some money, and we get to deal with a truck that isn't usable by our team anymore. We have another agenda item here that's coming up later regarding the SBCA contract, but we did quickly discuss that, and the result of that is there's a report tonight on that. And then the living wage update. Almost all city employees are paid beyond what the new living wage rate will be, which is $21.19. Where it may affect us, not in a huge way, but where it may affect us is some of our contractors. So we don't have the specifics on how that will come to pass, but we may see some of our contractors have to adjust that into the new year. And then we talked about our next meetings, and it's going to be very busy in January, so I'm hoping we can meet often. I was joking a little bit there. We won't be meeting on Sundays, but I might be the only one at the meeting, right? But definitely we're going to have to meet a few times in January to keep on track with capital budget and our other budgets. And that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Vic. Yes, Madam Hartley. You want a motion?
I have a motion. And the recommendation is that the FSAC Financial Sustainability and Audit Committee recommends to Council funding the following groups for the next 4 years, which I talked about briefly. North Caribou Highway Rescue for $12,500, Quesnel Search and Rescue for $14,750, Quesnel Ambassador Program at $5,000, and Baker Creek Enhancement at $10,000. I'd make that resolution.
That's your resolution, Councillor Elliott seconding. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Does that conclude your report? I have one question, and that is with regard to the living wage. Like, it's gone from $16.39 an hour to $21.19 an hour. What time frame is that? Is that over how many years? Is that, I hope it's not 1 year.
I think I direct that to Director Bolton.
So it is actually 1 year, but just so you know, they held it the same for a couple years because they were having some troubles calculating it in the north for whatever reason. They were having troubles getting rental information and that sort of stuff. But 2022 was a whole new calculation with the rentals and everything included, so it is brand new. But they do plan to calculate it every year.
And how does that living wage work? Is this $16, or pardon me, $21.19 unique to Quesnel, or is that a province-wide living wage?
That's the north, so Prince George, Quesnel area,
okay.
yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so the next item of business is for Councillor Runge, and that's the November 24th, 2022 Policy and Bylaw Committee report.
Thank you very much. So the purpose of this report is to inform Council of what was discussed at the PAPCOM meeting held on November 24th, 2022. So we had a couple things that we covered. The first one was the Development Application Procedures Bylaw. The Policy and Bylaw Committee discussed Parks Bylaw 1312, and as you see, it's 1995 with regards to the prohibition of camping in public spaces. So that bylaw needs a bunch of updates just to bring it up to, I guess, the 21st century. The committee discussed the development of an updated policy to provide restrictions on temporary shelter policies, including recommendations on locations. Staff will work with external community partners and research other communities to coordinate efforts to mitigate negative impacts on the community. Staff will bring a report and draft policy back to the committee that will identify best practices for the allowances for individuals to have the ability to shelter themselves and identifies areas where this is allowed, not allowed, and/or a combination of such. So, and then our second thing that we looked at was the Development Application Procedures Bylaw. And we discussed amendments of the Local Government Act in relation to the city's Development Applications Procedure Bylaw. The amendments are a result of a provincial development process review to expedite the housing development process in relation to bylaw readings and public hearings, which we've actually been quite good at here at council here, but it's not in all places in the province. So changes in the public notice gives opportunities for governments to have public options of public notice, in relation to what currently is strictly newspaper advertising. So it expands our options to online and additional other sources. So the Policy and Bylaw Committee directed staff to bring further report to include draft amendments to the relevant municipal policy. With 3 points: to identify alternatives to the public notice requirements, 2, to remove the requirement for public hearing if the zoning is consistent with the official community plan, and number 3, to propose parameters to delegate minor variances to staff. And so our recommendation is and so that was the final thing that we talked about. And our final recommendation, of course, to the council here is that we approve our 2022-2023 meeting schedule that was presented at our November 29th council meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Runge. That is a motion. I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Goulet, we're being held up by the law here.
No motion required. It was just another tonight.
Oh, did you hear that? I know that they just wanted their names
I
in
was
the
just
minutes.
testing them.
So that's okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, next item is council reports and discussion items. There's nothing on that one. Now we go to city staff reports, and this is K1, Admin Report 25/23, SPCA contract. Over to you, Director Bolton.
Thank you. So the purpose of this report is to seek council's approval of the attached one-year contract with the BC Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals for the SPCA to act as a pound keeper for the city. So the current contract expires at the end of the year. This contract is slightly revised with a few different changes, which I've outlined there. The costs have gone up approximately by CPI. The challenge for them is they're not sure what their long-term goals in Quesnel are, so that's the reason why they've asked for just a one-year contract so that they can figure out what they're up to in the city. And it also gives us a chance to think about what our options are. So the recommendation is that council approve the attached contract with the BC Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals for 2023, and that the mayor and corporate administrator be authorized to execute the agreement.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion on the recommendation, and then if we have any, or if we need any discussion, that'll follow the motion. Councillor Rudenberg moves, and Councillor Elliott seconds. Any discussion? Okay, Councillor Vick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess this is for Director Bolton. I looked at their budget for this year, and it seems like there was an inconsistency with how they report income. It said, do they get the licensing fees from the city as part of their budget?
No, it's our budget, yeah.
But they do get fees they derive from
Boarding and stuff, things like that.
and like seized animals. If you have to get your animal out of the pound and there's a fee, they get
It's
those
generally,
fees?
yeah, boarding fees, yeah.
Okay. They definitely made a reference to the licensing, but then in the budget, it wasn't there. So maybe they, okay. All right. That's the only question I had.
Any more? Councillor Runge?
Yeah, so I do have a question. Some of it comes from our last meeting. Let's start with the bullet number 1 on page 20 of 114. So continuing to the increased contract by the Consumer Price Index, we had a fine argument last week, I think it was week or whenever it was, one of our last council meetings where we tried to cap it for all our contracts. Are we not able to cap our CPI index here at the 4% also like we did at the previous for our contracts? And the reason I'm saying that is because that price index is actually, I think, on one of the pages towards the end, I think it's 31 of 114, they're actually increasing their CPI to the Consumer Price Index of Vancouver, which might not actually line up that well with ours here. So that's my first question.
So I'll answer that. So first of all, this actually, we ended a contract and started a new contract, so it's really, this is only a one-year contract. There's going to be no increases by CPI. They just referenced that the new amount was approximately what the CPI increase was, but this was what they needed to survive another year here from us.
And so, okay, thank you. And then the second, the third bullet, the force majeure that they're referring to, are they in labor? Because in their force majeure, they include labor negotiations as one of the things that actually falls into that. Are they into any? Do we know about any of that going on with them?
Not that I'm aware of. It's just a very standard clause that they've got from a lawyer, right, that includes all those various things, right? I think the big challenge for them was COVID, and they had to shut down during COVID, and we weren't paying them during that time, right? So this would, if COVID happened, we would have to pay them until we gave them a notice that we no longer needed their services or something.
Yeah, so going with regards to that, is there any way to negotiate on that? Because I'd hate to be stuck on the hook if something like this happened going forward, and once again, the services aren't needed by us. Maybe there's some sort of meet in the middle that keeps them running, but without, that's not fully
I got
funding
the
us.
impression from them that they're really just looking for a one-year contract as they reevaluate what they're doing in Quesnel. So I'm not sure that there's much room for negotiation on this one.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And I do have a question, and I think I asked this question before, but I didn't write it down, and that is, what is the status of rural participation in supporting our local SPCA?
They do not support it.
And we've asked.
We have asked, but
Yeah, well, I think they should, because so if someone from the outside area takes a dog into the SPCA, that's it. So the only contribution that they get from rural areas is stray dogs, not money. Okay, thank you. I think that needs some work. Okay, no further, Councillor Vic.
So this is for Director Bolton. So you mentioned this is a one-year deal. They're evaluating. So that sounds to me that there could be a real possibility that this could be the last year if they find that their model doesn't work here. So what would our options be?
So I think the biggest challenge for them is the age of their building. So if they do decide to stay, they're going to have to put investment into that building. So that's what they're really looking at and determining how we fit into their whole model of how they transfer animals around the whole province. I know Director Turner's department is looking at what other cities do with this sort of thing. There are other cities that don't have SPCA, so we will look at what other places do, and we've got a year to look at other options too.
Okay, so I presume that we'll be seeing some sort of a staff report further down the road. Okay, is there anything more on this particular item? Okay, now we will move to K2, Admin Report 19/23, Airport Advisory Committee, over to Director Norburn.
Sorry, Mayor.
Point of order, sorry. I think we
Mayor
vote
Paull?
on it first, don't we?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I did call for the question, and there's no further discussion, so all in favor? Sorry about that. Okay, now we'll go to Director Norburn on the Airport Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to obtain a resolution from Council to appoint members to the Airport Advisory Committee. Under the terms of reference for the committee, members' terms expire at the same time as the term for Council. In order to reestablish the committee, the current Council will need to appoint 4 community members to the committee, 2 nominated by the CRD and 2 selected by Council, and 1 elected official from the CRD Northern Rural Caucus. The CRD Northern Rural Caucus has nominated Jim Glassford, CRD Director for Area I, as the CRD representative to the committee, and nominated Fred Taylor and Dan McKeith, both of whom previously served on the committee. The mayor has recommended that the city appoint Jerry Van Haldren and a member of the Chamber of Commerce to fill the 2 remaining community member seats on the committee. The Chamber of Commerce has advised that Rick Whitner is willing to represent them on the committee, with Kathy Somerville as his alternative. The recommendation is the council appoint the following to the Airport Advisory Committee for a term to coincide with the term of the current council: Jim Glassford, Caribou Regional District District Director, Area I, Fred Taylor, Dan McKeith, Jerry Van Haldren, and Rick Whitner, with Kathy Somerville to act as alternate for the Chamber of Commerce representative, Rick Whitner.
Okay, there you have your report. I'm looking for a motion on the recommendation. Please, Councillor Vic, Councillor Runge, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Director Norburn. Okay, next one is Admin Report 2623, Northern Development Initiative Trust Annual Grant Applications Manager Reed to report.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to get Council's approval to submit applications to Northern Development Initiative Trust's annual funding programs. So these are the grants that we apply to every year. Economic Development Capacity Building is $50,000, and there's no contribution required from the city. Grant writing support goes towards the Economic Development Coordinator's position. The local government internship is $35,000 to $45,000. There's a new housing stipend that's allowed for the intern to claim as well, if they are paying a certain amount for their housing. And the city is required to contribute $20,000 over 2023 and 2024. And then the facade improvement program for $20,000. So there's 4 different recommendations. Would you like me to read through each one?
So we're going with recommendation number 1.
To start?
So I'd like a motion, Councillor Runge, Councillor Elliott. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. That's number 1. Okay, let's go to number 2. Okay, Councillor Runge, Councillor Goulet, any discussion? Councillor Rudin, oh, I'm sorry, you're just a late comer on the seconder. Okay, so any discussion? You got to quit waving your hand around like that.
Stop.
You're giving me a sign here. And you too. Okay, no discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And number 3, motion. Councillor Vic, Councillor Runge, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Love it.
Number 4.
Oh, is there? Oh, there is a 4. They were trying to trick me here.
I'll read that.
Sorry, I didn't notice it at the top of the next page. Yes, recommendation number 4, Councillor Rudenberg, Councillor Runge. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, we've got that one out of the way. So now we go to Admin Report 2223, Fire Smart and Community Resilience Program Funding Application, Manager Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll actually be taking this for Manager Robinson, who's actually out doing some other city work tonight. So the purpose of this report is to make council aware of the City of Quesnel's Fire Smart and Community Resilience Program for 2023 and 2024. The program has changed that we can now apply for 2 years, and we're seeking a council resolution. So by way of summary, the Forest Initiatives Program is seeking $200,000 in CRI funding to further advance the city's wildfire preparedness on private property. The CRI grant will be used for education, rebates for homeowners, Wildfire Preparedness Month, which is May, and furthering behavior change initiatives by working with local plant nurseries, building supply stores, building contractors, and realtors to increase community fire smart awareness. We're also planning to update our existing Quesnel and surrounding areas community wildfire protection plan and utilize goats for fuel management brushing at the fuel management trails. So the recommendation is that the Quesnel City Council supports the City of Quesnel's grant application to the Union of BC Municipalities for the 2023 and 2024 intake of the Community Resiliency Investment Program to carry out fire smart education, outreach, and communications, the rebate program, fuel management activities, and update the Quesnel and surrounding area community wildfire protection plan.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Councillor Runge, you're moving. And Councillor Elliott, you're seconding. Any discussion? Councillor Bick.
I'm interested to learn about how we utilize goats for fuel management.
Thank you. So my understanding is they need to be well managed. But they do bring them in. They actually are very closely managed, and they're let into a small, confined areas where they go, and I believe they actually. I'm kind of making this up. I don't really know, but what I suggest is when we have it going, that we'll actually have an invitation for council to go and do some of that investigation. The advantage of using goats is that they don't tear up the newly invested in trails, right? We put a lot of money into developing the fuel management trails, and they're very well maintained, and we don't want to damage them with bringing equipment in. So that is the point of it. But I will make sure that you get an invitation, and you can do some research and maybe report back.
I think it's compelling. I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager, for your honesty there. Much appreciated. Okay, so we're looking for a motion on the recommendation, moved by Councillor Rudenberg, seconded by Councillor McKelvey. Any discussion?
Just point of order.
Oh, point of order.
Yeah, it's already been moved and seconded by Councillor Runge and Councillor Elliott.
Oh, okay, then I'm just going to call the question in. All in favor? Carried. Sorry about that. Did you say no problem? I appreciate that, because it was a problem for me. Okay, then we're going to go to Administration Report Number 21 of 2023, City of Quesnel Business Improvement Area Bylaw Renewals for the Quesnel Downtown and for the South Quesnel Business Association. First and second readings, Director Bolton to report.
Thank you. So the purpose of this report is to request council to proceed with the first two readings of the Downtown Quesnel Business Improvement Area Bylaw and the first two readings of the South Quesnel Business Improvement Area Bylaw. So the groups came and presented their strategic plans, and council approved moving forward with this. So once these first two readings happen, we will mail out to all the businesses in the area, letting them know that a reverse petition is occurring and they have a chance to voice whether they're for or against this. And then we will proceed with more readings once that 30 days is up. We did receive a letter from some of the hotels in town that were opposed to the BIA, so we have included a copy of that letter in this area of the agenda, and also my response that I sent to them, letting them know that once they receive the letter from the city, that's their chance to voice their opposition, to reply back and let us know whether they're opposed or not. So the recommendation is that council proceed the first two readings of the City of Quesnel Downtown Quesnel Business Improvement Area Bylaw 1935, and then the second one is that council provide the first two readings of the City of Quesnel South Quesnel Business Improvement Area Bylaw 1936.
Thank you, Director Bolton. So before we go to a motion on the QDA and the South Quesnel, I have a question for Director Bolton, and what percentage of the total assessment of each of the respective business association areas would those hoteliers represent in each area?
So that list had quite a few hotels, but a couple of those hotels aren't even in any of the BIAs. There's two of them that were in South, two of them that were in Downtown, and I think one in West. I didn't look up the exact, but they're not going to represent a lot.
Yeah, I would think that it would have been negligible. Yeah. Okay, so recommendation number one, well, they're both labeled number one, but the first number one is to provide the first two readings of the Quesnel Downtown Association Bylaw number 1935. Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Vic. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. The next one is for the South Quesnel Business Association, and that is bylaw number 1936, moved by Councillor McKelvey, seconded by Councillor, who was that? Councillor Goulet. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Council. So the next one that we're going to move to is admin report number 20/23, BC Air Access Program Grant Terminal Building Upgrade, Director Norburn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to seek council approval to apply to the British Columbia Air Access Program, or BCAP, to upgrade the terminal building at the Quesnel Regional Airport. So the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure recently announced a new intake of funding for BCAP that closes December 22nd. The ministry established BCAP in 2015 as a multi-year funding program to enhance the long-term potential of BC's aviation sector. The city has applied for and successfully obtained funding from the program in 2016, 2018, 2019, and 2020, most recently for the helipad refurbishment. Under the program, projects may receive funding of 60 to 75% of eligible projects. In 2019, the city refreshed the lobby of the terminal building to modernize it and to reflect the city's brand. The proposed project will upgrade other areas of the terminal building, will include refurbishing the exterior, modernizing and improving the functionality of the security room, offices, and leased spaces. In 2024, the city will be hosting the BC Winter Games, and many of the participants, officials, and spectators will be traveling from out of town through the Quesnel Regional Airport. The estimated eligible project costs are $150,000. The city's contribution would be $60,000. The recommendation is that council direct staff to submit a grant application to the British Columbia Air Access Program for 60% grant funding for an upgrade to the terminal building at the Quesnel Regional Airport based on an estimated eligible cost of $150,000.
Okay, thank you, Director Norburn, and I will mention that the $60,000 city contribution has already been embedded into the draft 2023 capital plan. So now I'm looking for a motion to adopt the recommendation. And I'm looking at Councillor Elliott for a mover and Councillor Vic for a seconder. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, thank you for that. Now it's over the page to number 7, Admin Report 24/23, City of Quesnel Official Community Plan and Zoning Amendment Bylaw numbers 1933, 1934 for Gassoff Road Mobile Home Park, first and second readings and set public hearing date. Director Turner to report.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Council, the applicant is seeking approvals to create a parcel for an existing single detached dwelling at 2288 Gassoff Road from the parent parcel, which is part of a 20-pad mobile home park. The remainder of the Lot 1 and Lot 2 shall be consolidated and remain as a mobile home park. Please refer to the subdivision plan. The subdivision, however, requires the rezoning of the new proposed Lot B from the mobile home park zoning designation to RS1 single detached dwelling residential. The dwelling will have a separate access and connect to community water and sewer. The proposed Lot B meets all other regulations listed in this RS1 zone. As described in the justification letter attached from the applicant, this is being made as the residence is underutilized as the current park policy does not allow these units to be rentals. The model for this park development is that residents own their own mobiles and lease the pads. This is not a strata, and the applicant does not feel it will be impacted by the new rules being put forth by the province, which eliminates the ability to prohibit the rentals of strata units. The applicant has also submitted a development variance permit to request a variance for the proposed Lot A, which is the consolidation of the 2 other lots for the mobile home park, as this subdivision will not meet the lot size of 2 hectares, which is currently required for the zoning bylaw for mobile home parks. The 4.1 acre mobile home park is currently non-conforming as it was created in the Cariboo Regional District before the boundary expansion and the current policy in the city. I can't confirm if it would have met previous Cariboo requirements. The applicant is requesting to reduce the minimum lot size to 1.57 hectares, which is 3.89 acres. A resolution for the variance will be submitted for council endorsement at 3rd reading. Public notification of the variance will occur with the public hearing notice. I would like to move right to the recommendation if there's no questions from council.
Any questions from council before we move to the recommendation? Seeing none, recommendation?
Thank you, Mayor. The recommendation is that council provides first and second reading of proposed official community plan amendment bylaw number 1933 and zoning amendment bylaw number 1934 on Lot 1, District Lot 3948, Caribou District, Plan 12692 to permit the creation of a new single detached dwelling lot, subject to the applicant receiving a development variance permit to amend section 14.3.2A of the zoning bylaw to allow a minimum lot size of 1.57 hectares, 3.89 acres, and that council has considered consultation as per section 475 of the local government bylaw and directs staff that no additional consultation is required, and that council sets a public hearing date of January 24th, 2023 at 6 p.m. in council chambers.
Okay, thank you, Director Turner. I'm looking for a motion here, and it will be a not three motions, but a three-part motion. So a mover, Councillor Runge, Councillor McKelvey. Any discussion just before that? So we're dealing with first and second reading, and we're dealing with the consultation process, and we're dealing with setting the public hearing date, all in one motion. So is there any discussion on that one? So I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So the next one we have is it's going to go to Director Norburn, and this is Admin Report 2323, Great Canadian Rail Tour Company, License of Occupation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to obtain council approval to enter into a 2-year license of occupation with the Great Canadian Rail Tour Company for use of space in the station house, or the BC Rail building. The city has had a license of occupation with BCR properties, or the city has a license of occupation with BCR properties for the station house, which authorizes the city to sublet the building. The city has had a license of occupation since 2006 for use of the station house with the Great Canadian Rail Tour Company, who operate Rocky Mountain Vacations. The current 5-year agreement will expire December 31st, 2022. Great Canadian Rail Tour Company initially only used a small portion of the building for office and storage, but more recent agreements have included additional spaces. For the past 5 years, they have utilized the entire building. The agreement is substantially similar to the previous agreement, with the exception of the term, which is now 2 years instead of 5, and the amount of rent to be paid. The 2-year term is at the request of the Great Canadian Rail Tour Company to align with other lease agreements that they have. The rent payment has been increased by 2% over the previous agreement, with a 2% increase after the first year. The agreement is for a 2-year term, but includes a cancellation clause in the event that the agreement between the city and BCR properties is terminated. The recommendation is that council enter into the attached 2-year license of occupation with the Great Canadian Rail Tour Company for use of space in the station house, commonly referred to as the BC Rail building, and that the mayor and corporate administrator be authorized to execute such documentation as required to complete the agreement.
Thank you, Director Norburn. Do we have a motion to accept the recommendation? Moved Councillor Vic, seconded Councillor Rudenberg. I do have a question before I go to council for questions and comments, and that is regarding the 2% increase. Does that reflect the fact that they're now using the entire building rather than just a small portion of it, as is referred to in the report?
That change occurred with the last agreement. I think, you know, the reality was that the upper floor was really of limited value in terms of finding another tenant. I think we actually, for a period of time, did try to find another tenant, but of course we don't have reliable snow removal of that site in the wintertime. You know, the Great Canadian Rail Tour Company doesn't use it in the wintertime, so it's basically a dormant building. It has no wheelchair accessibility to the top floor, so I think it was considered to be of relatively low value. It was something they asked for additional storage space, so it was something that was incorporated into the last agreement. It doesn't really have anything to do with the 2% increase. We've just always had a 2% increase built into their agreements, and they agreed to continue that for this 2-year term, so we put that in.
So therefore, the 2% is their ask, not our ask.
the 2% is what has been agreed to by the parties for, well, since 2006. We've always had a 2% inflationary increase built into their agreement. And when we negotiated this 2-year term, that's what we agreed to through that process, subject to council approval.
Yeah, subject to council approval. Well, I'd like to suggest that 2% in view of present inflation is quite low, and I would be very surprised if the Rocky Mountain Rail Tours would keep their fares at a 2% increase. So something to consider in the future, that we're always looking for ways to, increase revenue without having to go to the taxpayer. Just my little editorial comment. So do we have no, I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Vic, Councillor Runge. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Vic. I thought you were moving, but go ahead. You did move, but now you're going to ask a question.
I'm just curious, it was a 5-year agreement prior to this, and now they're asking for 2, is that correct? Did you want to speculate on why they want such a short agreement as to the norm?
My understanding is their intent is to align it with other lease agreements that they have, because they have lease agreements in other communities along the rail line, and I think from their perspective, administratively, it's easier to deal with them all in 1 year and one fell swoop rather than to have different terms in different communities where they're having to manage all the different agreements. So they requested a 2-year term to line it up with other agreements that they have.
Okay, so Councillor Runge.
Yes, thank you. And I do agree with your 2%. I think it should be higher for the second term. I have a question with regard on page, and it might be for Ms. Bolton. It's on page 99 of 114, or maybe it's with Mr. Norburn. The city covenants, our city covenant, the costs of heating, water, sewer, property taxes, and garbage only. Do we have numbers for that, of what that has cost us in the past?
I think it's something we'll have to look up, but we don't have it at our fingertips.
I don't think we pick up garbage there anymore, so the question is how that's being done. And then my other question would have been with regards to heating in the winter with that type of a cost, whether it's being covered by that 2% increase at all. And then the other question I have is with regards to section C on page 99 of 114, the landscaping, beautification of the building, or the exterior painting. Do we see any of this happening in the next 2 years? And the reason I'm asking that is because that could well offset any kind of, well, I guess it's just a question.
Yeah, I mean, I think with regards to the sort of beautification around the building, for the most part, that's something that our Public Works Department does just as part of its general beautification of the community at large. It's not something that's necessarily specifically requested by the leaseholder or the tenant there. It's more something that we're doing to present a visually appealing community, in that sort of main gateway through town. But, it's entirely at the discretion of the city to do as much or as little of that as we like. It's not something that we're necessarily expecting to recover from the leaseholder.
Yeah, thank you. So my question, I guess, would be with budget stuff, is there something larger that's being looked at that's out of the realm of the ordinary, maintenance on that building? Because it is an older building.
No.
Okay, thank you for that. I think at the end of the day, they're getting a good deal, and maybe next year we'll look at trying to recover some of that cost that we're obviously putting in as a goodwill gesture. So I do have Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. Just a question to Director Norburn. Are they in the building like during the week, or are they just in the building when the train shows up?
That I don't know. I mean, it has changed. They continued paying the lease through COVID, even when they weren't operating, of course. And then, during the sort of out year, the first year post-COVID, they didn't have a manager on site, so they had somebody who was in Whistler who, managed the site off the corner of the desk, I guess. My understanding is they have a manager now. I don't know what their hours are or how many hours a week they work, but certainly they're not a full-time, daily, everyday kind of tenant. They're in there, I would say, part-time, and then they're primarily there for the arrival of the guests and the departing of the guests. And like I say, they have the building as part of the license of occupation, but they don't really utilize the full building. It's just, it's just that there really isn't much of a market for anybody else to lease that space.
Just to follow up after the information, thank you very much for that. That's kind of what I was assuming, is that they're not in there all the time. So I understand the need, or the wanting to recoup some more of the cost over and above the 2%, but. And I'm interested in having that conversation in the next, in 2 years or whatever. But let's just keep in mind that the multiplier effect for the city, the amount of money that they bring in for the restaurants, for the hotels, and is quite extreme. So I would just hope that they would be sticking around here for a long time, above and beyond the 2 years. And I'm not that concerned about additional rent.
Well said, Councillor Elliott, just as I would have written it, so thank you for that. So I have a motion. We have a motion on the floor, right? So now I'm looking for any further discussion. Seeing none, all in favor, opposed, carried. Okay, and now we go to number 9. And that is Admin Report 2723, Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program. You do not have this in your agenda package. It was handed out as a late item, and Director Coben is now going to take the lead on that one.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to gain Council's approval to submit an application for infrastructure planning to encourage development to the new Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program in the Forest Impact Transition Stream, otherwise known as REDIP. This grant, it's a new program from the province for communities with populations under 25,000. A maximum available is $500,000, which covers up to 100% of project costs. The estimated cost to complete is under $500,000. So this infrastructure planning to encourage development. So this project would provide the city with a comprehensive infrastructure plan, which includes hydrant flow testing, water, sewer, and stormwater modeling, capacity assessments, as well as traffic plans for specific areas, and updated cost estimates and project descriptions. A lot of this information a lot of this work has been done in the past. However, some of the things that to note are some of the plans are dated. They don't reflect recent development or new technical specification changes. Some new areas of potential development, such as Carson Bench, they're not addressed in the current plans. And infill development, it does represent a change that wasn't anticipated when planning was originally done, such as high-density housing in North Quesnel, which was traditionally single-family residential. The plan will focus on areas where the city expects substantial development and pressure on that infrastructure, which includes the South Quesnel commercial area, former QJS lands, Caribou Field, and Carson Bench. It allows the city to provide potential developers with, better and timely information about potential cost to their project, which gives them more certainty around their proposed developments. Currently, as it is now, each developer needs to complete their own studies, try to get as much information in Quesnel while it can be provided to them, it can be provided to them in other communities. Not having this information can add costs, contribute to delays, or cause the developer to lose interest rather than moving forward with their project. And it also may outline potential projects that the city could prioritize in order to encourage investment. The recommendation is that Council supports an application to the Rural Diversification and Infrastructure Program Forest Impact Transition Stream for up to $500,000 to complete an infrastructure master plan.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Councillor Runge, second. On the recommendation, is there any discussion before Councillor Elliott?
Just a quick comment, Mr. Mayor. This is a huge thing for the city, just to help clean up a lot of the work that's been done to try and attract developers to the city. This is a big step forward, and I'm excited to get it going if we so desire.
Yeah, I agree with that one. Anybody else? Okay, so do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved. Yeah, moved and seconded. Where was it? Councillor McKelvey? Are we good with that?
You have Elliott and Runge.
Well, I was just making sure. Okay. Okay, no further discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, that is it for staff reports. There was nothing called for in the council information package. We do have one item of correspondence, and that is a letter from Mayor Coleman of the District of Wells. So, Madam Clerk, if you could read that into the record or abbreviate it accordingly.
On December 7th, we received an email from District of Wells Mayor asking for a letter of support for the District of Wells application to the Reddit program for Wells Barkerville Community and Cultural Center renovation project, Phase 1, a $1.1 million project.
Okay, thank you for that. So I'd like a motion for a letter of support, if we would be so kind. Oh, going back to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may, I'd just like to draw council's attention to the fact that the Reddit program is the grant funding program which the City of Quesnel just applied under. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rudenberg, are you moving it?
No, I have a question.
You're commenting, okay?
Thank you. I know that they have different categories that you can apply to. Is this one the same? This isn't. Do we know if this one falls under the same category as what we just moved with?
Okay, so I'm going to go to Amy.
Sure. So there are 3 different streams. There's one where you can apply for up to $1 million at 80% funding. And that is what I'm assuming that Wells would be applying to, is that stream. It's the Reddit Ed. I think it's economic diversification. But it's all from the same $33 million pot of funding.
Okay, so it's just a different stream than what we've applied for. All right. And also there's a different stream for communities 25 and under, 2,500 and under.
Yeah, they can apply for a smaller. Sorry, they can apply for a smaller amount of funding if they're under 2,500 in population.
Right.
Also, I think at 100% funding. I didn't pay too close attention to that one because we weren't eligible.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. So just for clarity then, does this affect us in moving forward with our applications?
I would say they'll be in competition with each other. They'll all be evaluated based on their merits, but they're
So yes.
out of that same $33 million pot.
So,
Councillor Runge.
I might be speaking towards you, Mr. Elliott, or Councillor Elliott. I think we should support it. I mean, even though we are competing with it, we do want to support all the communities around our area. I think as they look at these things, I guess Northern Development will be looking at it. I don't think they will look at it as 2 separate pieces, right? Quesnel, it could have been 100 Mile, it could have been Williams Lake, but I think they're both beneficial to our community. Therefore, I think it's important that we support it. And likewise, if we had something, I'm sure that Wells would support us.
Okay. Councillor Rudenberg.
And just for more information, this program is basically replacing what used to be called the Rural Dividend Program, and it was a yearly intake. And so they've already said that this is good for 3 years, the intake, at $33 million a year. So, yeah, just for information.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this one? And let's remember that. Okay, Councillor Elliott.
I'm sorry, to Manager Reid. So I'm with Councillor Runge. I would love to show support, but for clarity, we're competing for the same pot? Like this could affect what we're asking for as well.
So every community, every municipality, every regional district area, every nonprofit organization, every First Nation organization, every First Nation coming from a community under 25,000 people in the province, except for the greater Vancouver area, can apply to this $33 million.
In spite of that, I think that we should support our neighbors in Wells, and remember that virtually every person that lives in Wells probably does their shopping here in Quesnel and supports our local economy. So I would encourage a positive vote on this. but that's council's prerogative. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Okay, am I going to get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Runge moves, and Councillor McKelvey seconds. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? One opposed. Do you wish that recorded?
Oh, sorry, I was in favor.
Oh, just a latecomer agreement there. Okay, thank you. So that is carried. One moment, I'm going to look at my agenda here. So now we move to bylaws, and actually we've already enacted or voted on several bylaws, but we have bylaw number 1917, City of Quesnel zoning amendment, bylaw number, 1917 on Gook Road, final adoption. Mover? Councillor Elliott, Councillor Rudenberg. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. And still on, this is the bylaw number 1922, City of Quesnel floodplain management bylaw number 1922 for final adoption. Mover, second, or mover, Councillor Vic, Councillor Goulet. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And finally, this is a late addition, and this is bylaw number 1932, City of Quesnel zoning amendment, bylaw number 1932 of 2022, Chew Road. We're going to repeal second reading, and then do we do? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to note that there's a little bit of a duplication of words in the late agenda item that you have in front of you. It says, whereas the property owner of the property, so it's just a deletion of the second property, just for that to be recorded in the amendment.
I'm sorry, I saw that it was pretty obvious, so I didn't think I needed to go to staff for an explanation, but it's always helpful. So do we repeal and move second all in the same motion, or do we do, okay, so we need two motions. Okay, so let's repeal second reading with the first motion moved by Councillor Vic, seconded Councillor Rudenberg. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now we're going to redo second reading, moved by Councillor McKelvey, seconded by Councillor Runge. You're looking at me like you're going to second it. But Councillor Rudenberg, she's doing this, so she's got the second. Okay, so any further discussion? Councillor Runge.
Yeah, I guess, could I get some clarification to what was meant here with our adding the text as follows in section 31.45, some clarification. So the use of worker accommodation facility, is that like a living quarters?
Thank you. Yes, that is a work camp, basically.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, calling the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We have no new business. We have no changes to the upcoming meeting schedule. No changes to committee appointments. Announcements, future events. Anyone? Nothing? Not even Christmas? Okay. Gallery questions. Mr. Wark, come on up. And you have to come up and identify yourself, give us your social insurance number, and tell us where you live.
Also the bank
I was just kidding about the social insurance number. Yes, please, because I won't hear you. And near anybody else.
1446 North Fraser Drive. Just to clarify for a dummy like me, you people just voted on a $50,000 for the airport, and just before that, you had directors for the airport, and half of them were CRD and half were city. Why is the CRD not participating in these improvements to the airport? Or did that get missed? Jeff asked for, there was a grant you were
Excuse me,
applying for?
I will go to staff.
Okay.
You're asking.
It was a
me-
grant that was being applied, and
I
the
got
city
the
share was
question.
half,
The-
so 50,000. Why is the regional district not participating?
They are. There is a participatory agreement with the regional district. Okay?
So part of that renovation will be paid by them?
Yeah, no, they don't go capital, do they? They go, Jeff, they
Yeah,
go operating.
their participation is strictly operating.
Yeah. That's the agreement.
Okay.
Are we done? Thank you, Wayne. Anything else? No other gallery questions out there? Okay, well, I guess we're looking for, before we do that, I think we just extend our heartiest compliments of the season to everyone, and all the best for the new year. Enjoy the holidays. It's going to be a well-deserved break. I know that for me, I've attended more meetings and met more people. In fact, I was down to Williams Lake 3 times last week on a glare ice road. But I never realized that the regional district would take up so much time, but it's all the indoctrination and so on. And today we had about a 4-hour meeting with Artemis Gold, which is the Blackwater Gold Project. So it's exciting out there. So, okay, everyone, any further comments, or are we going to look for a motion to adjourn? Councillor Vic, you look like you're in the mood to adjourn a meeting. Thank you.
I am. Let's do it.
Okay, and Councillor Tony Goulet, you're seconding. All in favor? I'm not even going to ask if you're opposed. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.